Welcome back. Now, obviously, the offseason has been absolutely fucking crazy. But what is even crazier and like the craziest pivot point for this entire offseason is that the Celtics actually just let go of Jaylen Brown completely, obviously. Like, we saw the trade go down yesterday. And just after a little bit to digest, I've been trying to find any sort of silver lining for Boston's perspective. But there actually is a little bit more than what meets the eye here because yes, you're giving up a shit ton of talent. So as far as like a talent downgrade, and like these are two teams that are trying to win the title next year as well, there's a massive downgrade. There's no disputing that whatsoever. Jaylen Brown is one of the top 15 individual talents in basketball. We're talking about 29, 8, and 5 last year, and like 6 for MVP voting for a top 2 seed. So yes, obviously it's a massive downgrade. Paul George can't create the same self-created looks out of ISO, not the same transition pressure, not the same athlete that Jaylen Brown is. That's just in a vacuum. But what actually matters as well to the NBA and like to what Boston like to do, two things: culture and fit. And really, this entire saga with Jaylen Brown, and it's even spanned from when they tried to ship him off a few years ago, but especially now, I mean, just in terms of the culture for Jaylen Brown, and we've seen him on his streams like saying some pretty overly confident statements here and there too. But the fact is, like, Boston is a team that holds their head high on winning culture. And in terms of just what Jaylen Brown's morale is at right now, like, we don't know. We can't really speculate too much. But we know Boston want to be ready to go right now and to know who's going to be on their roster as of right now. And that's why maybe not holding on to Jaylen Brown for too much longer, not dragging this one out like we saw what happened with the Ben Simmons thing with Daryl Morey and the Sixers all those years back. But overall, like, yes, it's a talent downgrade. Yes, they could have gotten possibly more for him. Yes, they didn't send him to the greatest place, but there is some benefits for the Celtics going into next season. And there is an avenue where, honestly, this could also pan out the opposite direction. You bring back basically two first-round picks and 2 second-round picks and you bring in a high-quality player. Like, Paul George will walk in and probably still be their second or third best player, probably their third behind Derek White from day one. You bring in some really key free agent signings as well. You retain your key role players that helped you get into the position that you were last year with Scheinman and Gonzalez. They didn't give him up in any sort of trade, not the Giannis trade, not this one. So the team actually is still pretty strong. And you could even argue there's an avenue where Boston is still just a better team than Philadelphia anyways. Because the fit with Philly, we'll get into it, but it's not really that great. And overall, we'll be quick with this conversation because I know everyone's heard about this so much. And it is disappointing. I mean, Boston, you'd think giving up someone who's a top 15 superstar in the heat of his prime, still 29 years old, you'd hope maybe you get like a VJ Edgecombe out of it. But at the end of the day, what this offseason has taught us about superstars is offensive impact does matter a huge ton. And Jaylen Brown just has never peaked in that compared to the other superstars around the league. We're talking about a guy, I think I pulled it up before, but he was like a -5 or -6 points per possession offensively to the Celtics. And it's because he thrives with a different type of skill set, which is really valuable, but just the slowed down bailout shot making. He's not a super portable piece, not a guy that can actually make shots off action all the time. In terms of just like, you're not really running movement shooting action for Jaylen Brown on the perimeter to open him up. He's not a guy that gets all the way directly to the rim every single minute he can. This is a guy that really thrives in that intermediate zone. He took the most twos out of anyone last year and a ton of deep twos, a ton of fadeaways, which yes, he's amazing at. But I wouldn't say he's at the Shea, Kawhi, or KD level. And there really aren't that many guys who can satisfy taking such drastic volume and actually make the amount of shots that they do. And Jaylen Brown might just be at the worst of that entire step itself. And point is, like, Jaylen Brown's defensive impact, like the athleticism, the transition pressure, the extra work on the margins, that's all valuable. But it's not like Paul George doesn't bring anything equally valuable back to Boston's system itself. Now, yes, they could have gone back VJ Edgecombe, but at the end of the day, Jaylen Brown just isn't as valuable as VJ Edgecombe is right now. VJ Edgecombe projects to be one of the top 25 to 20 players in the NBA when he hits his peak. From what we saw from year one, just the effort, the versatility of his impact, just the mindset that he plays with. VJ was never going to be on the table. This guy is more valuable than Joel Embiid is by a long margin for Philadelphia right now. And honestly, might be equally as valuable as what Tyrese Maxey is, if not more valuable. So there's no way you're going to get him for Jaylen Brown, especially when the Jaylen Brown fit doesn't even pose that beautiful for Philly anyways. But what I wanted to get into mostly was the fact that no one's talking about this, but Boston are still going to be contenders after this. Like, yes, I don't like the trade. Yes, it's nice to have this nice, like, diverse system of all this nice little bits of, like, handoff shot creation on the perimeter, have this full movement system with all these great decision makers on the floor, this nice read and react, pace and space. Yes, that's nice, but it was always nice to have Jaylen Brown as well as that apex athlete who can create comfortable shots closer to the rim better than anyone else on their roster. Jayson Tatum relies more on pull-up shooting variants, step-back three variants, much more than Jaylen Brown actually does. And Tatum can't comfortably create the same looks that Jaylen Brown can in that mid-range section. You can't always get directly to the rim, especially when teams, these playoff-level defenses load up. That's when there is a beauty to actually be able to have these muscle memory looks to actually fall back onto, where you have like the footwork, you have the power, you have the agility, you have the elevation tools. Tatum's an elite athlete, but he's not an elite shot creating athlete like Jaylen Brown is. That's what made Jaylen Brown so exceptional last year. And it was really nice having that dynamic. But fact is, they're choosing to prioritize their culture from day one for next season first. And then second of all, I mean, Paul George just fits really well for this roster. Like, we talk about, like, imagine the action that you see Sam Hauser and Derek White coming out of, Baylor Sharman coming out of, in terms of just running action on the weak side on those wings. And there you bring in one of the best screeners in basketball. You still have Nimi Cater as well. Like, Paul George as a movement shooter, what we saw in Philly last year, this dude is super productive. We saw it in the first round against Boston as well. Like, this dude was absolutely lights out. And yes, the health isn't really on his side too much, but we're still talking like last year, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He's still getting very, very nice defensive value when he's on the floor. And this is a guy that makes 40% of his threes on nearly 7 attempts a game. That's just another load of perimeter firepower added to this roster. And it is heaps valuable, especially with the season that Derek White had dipping back downwards in that end. But Boston just believe fully in what Jayson Tatum can do and just surrounding him with pieces that, yes, Paul George can also offer the shot creation, like some shot creation that Jaylen Brown did. He can still do that. He's 36 years old, but Paul George is still a plus athlete at this age. His handles, his shot creation, the over-the-top advantages that he still brings to the game. He's still a guy that can provide firepower in pick and roll, probably equally as good firepower as Derek White will, if not more. And in terms of like the actual space that Paul George is going to get, attacking drop coverage, when you have Mitchell Robinson setting these big physical screens, like Boston have great screen setters. They're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league. They just added one of the best offensive rebounders in the NBA, if not the best, with Steven Adams out. So Paul George, yes, he relies on a tough shot-making diet, but they have the rebounding to satisfy that at the same time. And look, I just think people are overblowing this out. But the thing is, like, this Boston team, like, outside of their star core, they're so well built foundation-wise and principle-wise amongst all of their role players and throughout all their depth, through all their coaching. Like, it's going to be a seamless fit anyways. And then Paul George is still one of the better wing defenders that you'll get in the league for small sample sizes. And obviously the point is, like, is this guy going to be available? That's a massive thing. But Paul George, as a defender, he's probably... And a lot of people disagree with me on this. Maybe Jaylen Brown's a better isolation defender, but isolation defense is pretty much overrated when you have the same strength of point of attack line that Boston do. We're talking about guys like Peyton Pritchard, and you have Derek White and Jayson Tatum, who are going to be majorly sharing those starting minutes with Paul George, like rinsing them out. But Paul George is a much better weak side and much better team defender than Jaylen Brown is even today. And that is what is ultra valuable. You better create those like extra possessions and just get out and transition more. Yes, he won't get out and transition as much as Jaylen Brown did in those outlet lanes, but also he gives more spacing. It's just, there's a ton to work with here. And like defensively, this might be, I think this will be a plus from year one at least. Maybe going into like the future years, this is where it gets a bit dicey and you do want to retain Jaylen Brown and still build back that relationship. But in terms of as we're looking into this year, because we were going into the East thinking Boston were probably the favorite coming out, going into the playoffs. Yes, they got bounced first round, but we were probably thinking they were going to be coming out, especially if Tatum didn't get injured for that game 7 against Philly. So I don't know. I think there's just a ton to work with. You bring in Mitchell Robinson for fairly cheap. Incredible deal. You bring in Mike Conley, one of the best vet guards in basketball right now. Just really plugging into this spacing and this mature decision-making lineup, which is absolutely perfect. So look, as far as Boston, like I expect them to be another top 3 seed again next year. Yes, Jayson Tatum, we don't know how he's going to be back as the 1A, but we've seen Jayson Tatum put up 30-point per game seasons before. And Jayson Tatum, like, in a vacuum, he's a much better player than Jaylen Brown is, and he impacts offense at a much better level, much better decision maker, one of the best passing forwards that the NBA has ever seen. Commits to Boston's game plan and culture a lot more than Jaylen Brown did, in my opinion. So look, Boston are still big contenders, maybe not as good as having that extra Jaylen Brown outlet, because having Jaylen Brown in the postseason, that matters a shit ton. And it's going to be a lot more valuable than Paul George's second side shot creation will. And PG's second side shot creation, it will never live up to what Jaylen Brown's was. But that is, like, in terms of just the regular season ceiling, it's still really high. In the postseason, you just got to rely on Jayson Tatum just being the superstar, like, near top 5 player that he is. So they're still contenders for this year. The fit is actually better with PG. That is the end of story. It is better, especially for the 82 game sample size. Gotta hope he's here for a bit, like, you know, in terms of his durability and stuff. You better hope he's on the court like JB was. So I don't love the trade, but there actually is some merit when you do fight for your culture. So you don't have this overhanging cloud going into, you know, preseason camp. So I don't know. I think Boston will still be one of the best teams in the league. But going on to Philly's front, I haven't really done too much thinking into this one because obviously everyone's going on about, oh, how glamorous it is you bring a 30-point per game MVP candidate to add alongside whoever they already have. Joel Embiid and JB, that pairing sounds disgusting, first up to me. You got two guys who are very average playmakers for their position, probably going to be taking up most of their usage. I know they still have Tyrese Maxey as well, but in terms of just the clunkiness of their fit, where does Joel Embiid like to do most of his work? In that midsection free throw line. He likes to halt the pace a ton. Jaylen Brown's the exact same from the exact same section on the court. They just don't integrate movement as much. At least Embiid can be this DHO fulcrum, but Jaylen Brown as like a shot maker on the weak side, like, you know, you're matching him and VJ Edgecombe. Like, I know VJ can hit shots and he proved he couldn't, but they're just not ready to be able to hit those at a championship level ceiling level, I don't think. And then, like, obviously, I love the Dean Wade pickup. I love Anthony Simon's pickup, drafting LeBaron Fallon Jr. or something. I don't really know much about him, but bringing up another guard as well to put alongside the ball handling. Bringing in Errol Huckporty, I don't really see too much merit in that. Maybe he's got more of a safer ceiling than Adam Boner. But point is, the starting lineup is okay. The depth is okay. I know you lose Kelly Oubre as well. Look, I think it's a talent upgrade, which is the biggest thing. And, like, a lot of this is just a lot more basic than it needs to be. Like, they're going to be a better team because you bring in Jaylen Brown for Paul George. That's the truth of it. But they gave up a lot of draft capital in this deal. And especially for a guy that doesn't actually fit that perfectly with this roster. So I think it'll be interesting. I don't think it just levels Philly's ceiling all that much. And to be honest with you, just off face value, I'd probably take Boston to be a better basketball team than Philadelphia from day one. That doesn't mean that if they matched up head to head, I'd probably take this Philly team still. But you bring in Mitchell Robinson to neutralize Joel Embiid. You have the Paul George pairing, so I think it'll be pretty close between these two teams. But just the overwhelming talent that Philly's trying to chuck into that starting lineup, that is going to be really, really fun to watch. I don't think it'll be beautiful basketball. I think it will be pretty clunky. But just the talent level, the amount of all-stars on one team, like, I think it'll be pretty nice. So I don't have too many thoughts about Philly. I think it's pretty simple. You add one of the best players in the NBA, you get better. And JB has proven to be portable. He can work on the margins, but as of the past few years and what he excels at best, it's been that apex on-ball scorer who doesn't really integrate much movement, but focuses on just getting his own, literally. And then quickly, just to end here, because I've been going for a little bit, but the Boston point, a lot of it also has to do with flexibility. I mean, PG has 2 less guaranteed years on his contract, and the last bit of his contract ends with a player option, which you'd think at the end of his career, if he doesn't want to tank his value, he might want to rework that player option as well when he does reach, 38, 39. But PG is a skill player. Like, we've seen guys like, you know, Curry, KD, LeBron worked on the skill level as well towards the end of his career, but even guys like Dame, Kyrie. These guys are still good in their 30s, including Paul George and like Kawhi Leonard for, say, James Harden, because they're skill-oriented players. Yes, PG loves to have the athleticism advantages that he does have, especially on the defensive end, but this dude's a skilled shot maker, really poetic handle as well, and he's keeping the mobility as chiseled as he possibly can, even despite all the injuries. So in terms of the flexibility to be able to also rework a deal towards the end of this contract, it's a terrible contract. It might be the worst in the league still, but there is still an avenue for you to get better from it. Again, he's got less guaranteed years than Jaylen Brown does have, and he is earning less money, and by the end, when he gets that player option, you might be able to entice him. If this relationship works out well on the court, you might be able to entice him to signing a much smaller deal towards the end if PG really cares about winning a title for his legacy. Anyway, that covers everything. Anyway, point is, I don't think Boston won this, but I don't think Philly... I think Philly won the trade, but it wasn't like this overwhelming power punch of a win. I think it was mutual benefit for both teams, but we'll see how it fares out. I'm still really high on Boston because I just believe in their culture, their coaching, and I believe in their superstar and their depth and just everything that they have going for them. And I think bringing in PG, like, he's just another super complimentary piece that brings in actual still second side shot creation. Yeah, not to the level of JB, but this is still a guy that can reach all-star level impact on certain nights. So we'll just see how it fares out. But this has been a super interesting offseason so far, and I'll probably be coming back with another topic fairly soon. But I really appreciate you guys listening, and I'll catch you guys in another one.